All right, everyone, thank you for coming to our talk. Today, we're going to talk about tile generation. And I'm Dustin Ruehle, and that's Tom Collings. And we work for ECS team. A little bit of background, ECS team, just very quick, is a trusted pivotal partner, and we do a lot of cloud native development and platform dojo type activities. Excuse me, for a lot of customers that are wanting to go through a transformation faster, easier, and safer. And how you can reach us, Twitter handles, and emails. After the presentation, feel free to reach out, ask questions. All the code that we're going to be talking about today is up in GitHub. We'll have those links as well. Quick show of hands. How many have actually done something with Pivotal Cloud Foundry? Okay, excellent. So that pretty much same amount of people know what a tile is. All right, great. How many know non-Java code? All right, oh, good. Okay, we were wondering what we would kind of get for a group of people. That's excellent. Okay, so what are you going to see today? Well, we're going to take this microservice. Yep. And then we're going to turn it into a service broker. Does anybody recognize that broker? Right? It's always interesting to see if people remember the old school movies.
It's going to end better than it did for him.
Yes. And then lastly, we're actually going to turn this into a tile. So we're going to walk you through that journey today of how we have this existing app, does something we think is kind of cool, or starts to, and you might be thinking, what's the art of the possible? How do I want to share this with my organization? How do I make it portable? How do I want to make it easy to upgrade? Things like that. And we're going to talk about that. All right, so let's start with breaking down the pieces that you are going to see today. All right. First thing is we're going to talk about, we have this misbehaving memory app. So what you're going to kind of see is just a traditional feedback control loop. Okay, and so we have this misbehaving app, and it just churns a bunch of memory. All right, that's deployed on Cloud Foundry, and of course it's sending its container metrics, its metrics through the fire hose.
Before that, folks know what the fire hose is?
That's true, great point.
All good? Yep. All right.
All right. And then we have this auto-scaling nozzle. Everybody knows what a nozzle is then, if all the folks know what a fire hose? Great. Anybody not know what a nozzle is? Okay, real quick. A nozzle is nothing more than an application or something that connects to the fire hose. It's just a WebSocket, and then basically receives events and processes those events in a nutshell. So nice little metaphor, fire hose, nozzle. All right, so this app is a memory-based autoscaler. It's a nozzle. It connects to a particular app, and then it receives that event, and then we have our feedback control loop now, where once the app runs out of memory, we're going to start to do some actions on top of that.
Right, so the actions are kind of interesting. Are folks familiar with the autoscaler that currently comes with Pivotal Cloud Foundry and how that works? It's a CPU-based autoscaler, right? You can set your minimum, maximum thresholds that you want it to act on, your minimum, maximum instances. This does the same sort of thing, except it gathers container metrics for the application in question and looks at the memory usage of that container. So for all instances, it averages the memory usage across those instances. If that usage exceeds the threshold for a given period of time, you don't want to deal with spikes as it's going around. So if it's over that threshold for a while, it goes ahead and scales the instances up. In a nutshell, that's what it does. So we've got this immature little app that behaves through environment variables, talking to a single instance. You have one instance of all your threshold parameters, and we want to turn it into a nice grown-up broker. I expected more laughs out of that.
Well, your timing was off.
That's horrible. All right. So service brokers. Are folks here familiar with what a service broker is? And what it does for the most part? Okay, so we have to implement the 5 endpoints. You got to say what your catalog is. You got to have your endpoint that instantiates the service instance. deletes that service instance when it binds to an application, and then when it deletes that binding. So you do those 5 things, and there's some steps in the CF/CLI you have to do to create the service broker, enable the access to that, to get that in the marketplace. So what we did is we set up a Negroni server with the Gorilla Muxer and just added these endpoints into our Go program.
All right, so part of what we wanted to show you is that as part of a tile generation, you can have multiple apps that are doing something. So in this particular demonstration that you're going to see today, we actually have a separate app. So that first part of that's actually the service broker, the nozzle itself. So it started as a nozzle, and then we turned it into a service broker by implementing those methods of the interface, right? That was in Golang. And now we need to give it a little bit of a console. So if you're familiar with the CPU scaler, we actually follow the same kind of model. And we have some various parameters that you can configure, right? Like, what is your minimum memory, maximum memory? Where you want to go from min instances to max instances? And then, how long from do we want to wait until we scale? And then, how long do we want to wait until we're over our memory and do something, as Tom had said? That is correct. So, great question. The question was memory something that we, had to do, or was it something that you could just select whatever, like response time? Is that correct? Okay. The answer is that's just something that we selected, was memory. You could actually do any kind of metric or some other piece of functionality. You can think about turning some good things to turning into service brokers. So say you have legacy MQ in your actual enterprise, and you may already have a bunch of legacy applications that have a bunch of helper libraries that will actually go and, for the applications, connect to these queues and manage and create queues for that. And you can turn that particular piece into a service broker. You can actually set up an app to do response times and get a different metric coming out of the fire hose for an app. So absolutely, memory we picked was arbitrary. It's a great question.
Well, not completely arbitrary. Customers have asked for memory.
This is true.
And when we go in and explain the autoscaler to them right out of the gates, they're like, well, it's just CPU-based. We have memory-intensive things and we'd like to scale based on that. And the answer's always been, well, just plug into the fire hose. And it was nice to actually work it through an example where you're hooking into the fire hose and seeing the magic happen.
Certainly in an ideal world, you don't want to, we write code that doesn't leak, so it's somebody else's fault. But you certainly don't want everything to go, super slow, let your bathtub fill up without trying to, use the power of Cloud Foundry and scale up very easily while you kind of fix what your application's doing. Yeah, you may be running it efficiently, but at least your user experience is still moving along. So really, this is a way to interact with the app. And as I said, we wanted to do 2 technologies. This was completely arbitrary. This is a Spring Boot app using Timeleaf. There's tons of samples out there. There's nothing magical in here. And it's just basically form submission. And so, again, 2 pieces. The one key point there, when you are implementing your interface and you're doing the put to the create endpoint in your service broker, if you actually return a JSON object that is the dashboard URL of the URL for this UI application, then, as you'll see a little bit later, when you go into the apps manager, you can click manage and your console appears. So here we're going to show you in our demonstration that there's a way that you can link this in with the apps manager so that a developer experience, a lot of developers, they may not want to use the command line and they want to just use the apps manager. Who doesn't know what the apps manager is? Oh, excellent. Okay. So that mechanism, if you want to connect the 2, you just actually return this URL in your create service instance method that you've implemented.
All right, a couple more details on how we turned this into a service broker. Originally, it was just a single tenant attached to one app, so if our scaler crashed, it didn't matter. It would just come back up, see how many instances we're running, and then start taking statistics from that point. If we're attaching to multiple apps, we need some persistence behind the scenes, so we use the MySQL tile. created a service instance from that using the create service, bound it to our application like you would with any other service, and then we're able to store our state back in that MySQL server instance. So if the application crashes, we can come back up and continue merrily along our way.
So the key point is you're not restricted when you're doing and thinking about how can I take an app. It doesn't have to be a simple app. You can have a little bit of complexity. It can be multiple components. It can have multiple dependencies. And the whole point here is to open up your minds to say, hey, now I can bundle that all together into a tile.
So why not just deploy the service broker, right? You could. You absolutely could. But now that we introduce things like binding to a service, making sure that service is created, it gets more complicated. You could write a script to handle all those things for you, but now that script is probably outside of your application itself. Hopefully you have a CI/CD pipeline, Jenkins, Concourse, something that's managing that for you, but it's better to have everything together as a single instance that you push out and configure for all end users.
So real quick, before we move on, is everybody following so far? We've got our application. Step one of turning that into a tile. You don't have to, but you get some certain advantages with multi-tenancy. We turn it into a service broker. All right, anybody have any questions to this point? Okay?
Yep.
Yes?
So you're asking why not just a service broker?
Yes, yes.
Tile, there could be a service broker, right?
So say that again, I'm sorry?
So the tile will use a service broker.
Absolutely. So when we walk through our steps of creating the tile, the question was, will the tile use the service broker? We'll include both the web console dashboard app and the service broker application inside the tile.yaml as we go through the steps of generating the tile.
And we're actually going to walk through generating the tile so you can see how pretty simple it is with the tile generator.
So hopefully this isn't news to most of the folks in the room, what a tile is. It's a .pivotal file. It's just a zip containing the executables and the Bosch manifest. It's all that self-contained functionality like we were talking about before. It's a single unit you can carry around, put anywhere you want to go. It includes the Bosch managed VMs if you want to spin up, like, say, MySQL instances on VMs outside the ERT. Application service brokers, you can even put build packs in there if you feel like getting crazy. Managed through the Ops Manager console, and hopefully most of the folks here have seen that.
That's a key point to note, is that even though today we're demonstrating turning an application into a tile, that this tile generation has the capability of doing a lot more types of tile generation input types. And we'll talk about that more in a minute.
Yep. So we kind of talked a little bit about this as we've been going along, when to develop a custom tile. These are some of the bigger use cases. If you're provisioning services for the system, self-contained functionality, integrating the third-party functionality like Dustin mentioned, the MQ things or databases. If you need new virtual machines inside your foundation, you make these Bosch managed VMs by using the tile, and then you get all the benefits of Bosch, restarting, monitoring the processes, all that wonderful stuff. So if you wanted to create a tile before this new utility came out, you had to start with your Bosch manifest. How many folks here are wizards at Bosch? How many people here are novices at Bosch? That's
How many
like
people don't know what
5.
Bosch is? Okay, why don't you tell them what Bosch is?
Bosch is, well, I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead to this slide. This is the learning curve of some of your favorite technologies. Let's see, Java is the red one. You get better at time pretty linearly. Spring Boot and Spring, there's a couple of humps there, but you get pretty good and proficient. Bosch is awful. It's
Yes.
a really complicated technology to learn, but it's great. It's so powerful with how it can provision, create VMs, processes on those VMs, set up all the monitoring. Bosch is the secret sauce of Cloud Foundry. Without that, the reliability down at the VM level just wouldn't happen. Yeah, so going back up a slide here, if you're generating a tile and your very first step is a Bosch manifest, it's already a pretty daunting task to have to start with that as your first thing. So people have been reluctant, we've noticed, to go and start that process of generating a custom tile for their enterprise.
Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about a tool that has been put out by Pivotal that's called the tile generator. And we'll have a link to the GitHub site later on. How many folks here have heard of or used the tile generator? All right, a few of you. That's great. So basically a tile generator is a project that takes all of that mess that Tom said that's very complex and doing it all yourself and trying to make that learning curve a little bit flatter. So you're doing all that power that Bosch gives you and bundling up and all of the, being able to turn it into a pipeline by using this tool. So your inputs we talked about, right? A service, it doesn't have to be a service broker. There's some advantages that we talked about for that. But a service pack, a build pack, a service broker, even a Docker image. These are all could be inputs, to your tile generator. And then inside of that, you can manage all of the details associated with what you want to do with your tile. So things like deploy scripts or Bosch releases or, things of that nature. And then it's going to generate all of this for you and put it into that .pivotal file. Any questions at this point? We're going to get more into kind of peeling back what that is and kind of some of the steps that you got to do, but just kind of want to introduce what that is. Okay?
All right, so we've got our service broker application, we've got our web dashboard. So now let's start beginning to generate the tile. There's a tile utility, you download that from GitHub. It's a Python utility, so you got to do some pip dependency management there. And you also have to have the Bosch CLI on your machine, which is also, that's a Ruby gem, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So get that on your machine. If you do a tile init, it'll create this shell tile.yaml file for you. And then you go in and start making modifications to that tile. So we're going to go through some of the sections of this tile, kind of at a high level and what they mean. And later on, we're going to go through an example of actually modifying a tile for our use and then deploying it out. So there's a header section there. We want to give the tile a name. We want to give it a nice little image to use when we go see it on the console, a label and a description of what's going to happen. Pretty straightforward stuff. If you want to have a service broker or just a regular application living in its own organ space, there are tags in there where you can create that organ space as you're going. This last one, apply open security group, is to just use the wide open group.
All open.
All open, right, that's what they call it. Do folks know what security groups are? Does anybody not know what a security group is? PT doesn't, all right. So then we come to the packages, and these are the actual pieces of code that get deployed when the tile gets deployed. So the first one we have, the type is an app broker. And that's the piece that becomes a service broker. When the tile generator sees that tag, it knows how to take this piece of code, register it as a service broker with the foundation, and do those CLI commands I was telling you about before. It'll actually create the errand of, what do they call it, deploy service broker, register service broker, something like that. So that script I was telling you about before, the tile generator will automatically create that for you. This manifest section is exactly like the manifest section the manifest YAML you do when you do a CF push. So you can declare all the regular sorts of stuff there. Need CF credentials. Our application connects to the fire hose. And in order to do that, you have to have administrative privileges to do so. So by doing that, that will take the system services user that got created in the Elastic runtime and put the username and password as environment variables inside our application. So our application can grab those credentials and connect to the fire hose at runtime. Auto services, we gave it the name PMySQL on the plan 100 MB dev. That will go ahead and create a MySQL service instance for us and bind it to our service broker. All that's happening in this declarative way of the YAML section. And then enable global access to plans. There's a step you do when you create a service broker. If you don't enable the global access, or you only enable access in certain orgs and spaces, you don't see that plan or that service in the marketplace. So you have to do normally the CF enable service access, and that's what that tag's all about.
So right away, just listening through and watching this manifest and the tile YAML that you need to adjust, already he's touching multiple things that you would have to do just to deploy this one application that has a dependency. A lot of CF commands and lots of things that could be missed. You could automate it, but that's what the tile generator does for us.
It actually also does the opposite of that, which is really handy. So when you remove your tile, the general cleanup of that can be, or you remove a service broker, the cleanup of that can be quite a pain. This handles that. It'll create the delete service broker script for you. So when you remove your tile, everything associated with it disappears as well. Some more notes on that package stuff. Several types you can have. You can have application brokers, brokers that are external to your foundation. You can push a build pack, Docker versions of Bosch app and app broker, a blob, or a Bosch release. And there's different parameters, obviously, after each one of those to make those work correctly.
Again, today we're just going to focus on taking an app, a couple of apps actually, and bundling those into a tile, and then uploading that tile and installing it.
Yep. So we also need a stemcell. Our particular example, we're not creating any VMs for this, so I think we could have left this out, but it creates a compile VM. As it goes through all its steps, it spins up a VM to compile the package for us, so that's the stemcell it uses because that's the one we specified. You can include properties. Do I need to explain properties? All right, good. So if folks here are familiar with the normal tiles, and we'll get to an example of this a little later on, sometimes you have to fill some things out, like which network you're attaching to or some special properties that are going to be associated with your applications. So this form will go ahead and create a page for you on the tile in the Ops Manager where you can enter those values, and when you hit Save and Apply, these values become environment variables for your app broker. So the one we have here, the example is skip SSL validation. We're going to do this in our lab back in Colorado where we have self-signed certs. And if you don't have the skip SSL validation flag when you're trying to connect to the fire hose, it'll fail to connect. So we need that flag passed in. So that seemed like an interesting thing to throw in as a form to demonstrate the capabilities. And the last section of this is the dependencies. So we're saying we need the MySQL tile out there, and it has to be at least version 1.7 in order for us to fully execute this tile build. All right, Bill, am I still doing this section?
Yes.
I forget. Okay.
Yes.
So once we have the tile.yaml created and it looks the way we want it, we just go to a command shell and type tile build. That's all it takes. It'll create the .pivotal file for you, and it maintains a tile version YAML, so it'll increment the versions for you as you're moving along. And once that's done, you upload it, you type in all your changes, you hit apply changes on the thing, and it goes and churns through all that tile magic. So for our example, there will be an org and a space that get created. It doesn't actually create a new admin user. It uses the existing one that got created in the ERT part. Deploys the application, it deploys the service broker, it creates a PMySQL service and binds it to the app. The broker is registered as a service broker, enabled for all orgs. It's in the marketplace. And all those environment variables that came in when we set up the tile are now available to the application. Now our application in other orgs and spaces can go create services, bind to that service, and watch themselves scale if they run out of memory.
Okay. Anybody have any questions at this point? There's been kind of a lot of fire. Yes, go ahead. So what is in the zip file? You want to take that question?
The zip file or the pivotal file?
What the tile generates at the end?
No. Okay, so this is something we discovered as we were building this. There are two ways normally of deploying a Go application. You can build the binary for your target OS and deploy the binary with the binary build pack, or you can use the Go build pack and point to the directory that it's living in, and it'll just take all the files in that directory with the vendor dependencies and then push the app with that build pack. So the binary build pack is the preferred method. We generated a binary and tried to push it with a path pointing to that binary. There's a bug, I'm going to call it, well, it's an incomplete feature, I'll call it that, where it doesn't recognize the name of the binary as an actual executable. It thinks it's more of a path. So if we said /memory-based autoscaler, it would look for a directory called memory-based autoscaler and look for an application inside of that to execute. So the workaround is to zip everything up that would normally be found by the Go build pack and then have that be your path.
And we're actually going to walk through that right now. So you kind of, excellent, you jumped ahead to a step that we were going to demonstrate. So any other questions? The question is the source code open source? And the answer is yes. This is all on our ECS team GitHub, public repositories. And so, we'll have the link at the end of the slides and invite folks to try it out, ask some questions after the fact for sure. Any other questions? All right, slideware done for a little bit. Any Homer Simpson fans? Oh. Okay. So, what I'm going to show you right now is that I've got nothing in my directory, so I'm going to go ahead and grab the 2 projects that are in Git. And so this is the memory-based autoscaler. This is the actual nozzle that we are grabbing and bringing it down. And then we're going to actually also grab, as soon as this finishes, which it was a little bit faster before, but it will finish pretty quickly. So we're just grabbing this down. We're going to walk through all these steps. You want to do some dancing while this is doing that?
I'll tell a joke. What did the fish say when it swam into the wall? Damn.
There you go.
I'll be here all week. That's going to be on YouTube forever, yes.
All right.
It's a great time for an internet hit.
Yes, it is. Okay. Any other questions while we're waiting for this for maybe a few more seconds?
Talk about how an app that wants to make use of this service perimeter or this tile actually does that. How do I get it to connect to that autoscaler? You mentioned it a while ago, but I was too slow.
Oh, so the question is, how do we get it to connect to an autoscaler? And I'm going to say, why don't you hold that question, because we're actually going to walk through that a little bit later.
Okay.
So, yes.
This one, it may be a little pedantic. You had mentioned the dashboard URL when you create a service instance, but it referenced an app name. So is it when you bind the service to an app that you get the dashboard URL?
Yes.
Okay.
No, so in this case, there's actually, so if you've actually peeled back, and we followed the same model, but if you peel back the Pivotal CPU autoscaler, it actually, for every service instance you create, you can only bind that to one app. So as soon as you actually, in a space, take a second app and you try to bind to it, it actually throws and already has an app exception. Okay? So we followed the same model. So in this case, to answer your question, it's actually on create. It will create that link. Now we have an app in there because it could be a relative path, but we have an app simply because we are not worrying about, or we're doing 2 applications, right? So we want to link the 2 together, just to kind of show that it doesn't have to be one application bundle that you want to throw out there in a tile. All right, so now we've done that. This one is a much smaller project, and so we'll get that. Okay, and then we're going to assemble this. So again, all this is come on. Oh, I'm not able to make that larger.
That's right. It's Java code.
It's Java code.
Yep.
All right. Everybody knows what that is. Just model view controller, Spring Boot app. Okay, so now we're going to go into, this is where we are actually
Memory-based.
memory
B. Dash B.
dash. There we go. All right. And now, one thing we got to do is, this is where we're actually going to build the tile from. So we have the app, and this is the context of where we want to build the tile. Since we're bundling this other app with it, we want to grab that jar we just built and put it inside the resources directory inside this application, this project. So we have that. We're going to copy it and we're going to give it a name, and I'll show you why we simplified that name in a minute. Okay. So right now, just to show you what we have here, this is basically we have checked in a tile YAML that existed previously, and we're actually going to regenerate that so you can see how easy it is. Actually, we're going to move that.
Do a tile in it.
Oh, that's right. So the first step you want to do when you're actually generating a tile is a tile init. But before I do that, the prerequisite that Tom talked about earlier, we get the tile generator, and then we put the executable that is inside the bin, the command tile inside that project, you put it on your path. Okay? So now, again, I'm inside the scope of the project that I want to bundle as a tile. I've pulled in a dependent application that I want to be part of my tile. Okay? And now I'm going to do a tile init, which is step one when you're building this tile. And what that has done is it's actually generated a new tile.yaml. Okay? And so now we're going to come in, and I'm going to make everybody can hopefully see that. I'm going to reopen this guy. And just so we can see these side by side. All right. Why is that not dragging? We'll just do this. There we go. Okay, so the tile old has a bunch of things that we're leaving there for convenience, and we're going to walk through those. So that's what we're going to see first is that the one on the right is the tile init generated this standard YAML file. Okay? And the first thing we want to do, it takes the name of the directory that we're in, and then we're going to, we have a icon that we've used, and we have a canned label and description that we want to use. So I'm going to copy those over there. So as we talked about, you want your label and description. Now what we want to do is we're going to specify what org and the security groups that we want to employ for this. And we're going to copy those over. Okay? Now, the default just has this basic application, but now we're going to grab, this was already and I'll walk through that after I get over here and it's nice and pretty. Okay, so now what we're looking at is on the right-hand side, we have our first application that is the Go app. And there's we've said it's of type app broker, so it's a service broker. Okay? It has its manifest, and we're going to tell it to use the Go build pack. It needs the credentials, as Tom had mentioned. Has its dependency, and we want it to be visible in the marketplace. Okay, now, and going back to the question over here on the side, what is in that zip? We're going to do that in a second, but we're basically saying the code for this application, the package of that code is that zip file, and it happens to be in the same directory. Okay? There's no restriction on that, just the way we did it for this demonstration. Now, the second app, it's the web application that we talked about, Spring Boot, and it's of type just an app. Here's where we copied that jar. You saw us do that copy and some other stuff. And this particular app doesn't need any credentials. We're not doing any kind of security of it, although in a kind of production type of scenario, you absolutely would want to do so. Is there a question? Okay. All right. Now, we're going to go ahead and add the stemcell for the compilation VM. This is where if you were actually doing a Bosch manage release with some VMs in there, this would become much more critical in terms of what version you need for whatever functionality you were trying to expose as a tile. Okay? We're not doing anything with properties in this demonstration. And then the next interesting part is this forms piece. And so as you're going to see here shortly when we actually build this tile and then we actually go and install it, when you see the forms that you fill out in a normal tile installation, this is where you have that control. So I'm going to put these over here into our new tile. And we're going to have a skip SSL validation, and we're also going to add a piece for what is the apps domain, right? This is part of the way so you can make it dynamic and parameterize how you want to pass things between the components inside your application. In this case, we're going to say what's the apps domain, so that helps us build the URL to reference the application. And that'll become more clear when we get to a little bit later in the demonstration. Okay, everybody following so far? Okay. And then lastly, because the service broker requires this for persistence, we're going to go ahead and do that. And so right now we have a tile YAML that will take these two applications. It's going to put it into this organ space. It's going to create a bunch of environment variables that we can go to and we'll talk about and show in a few minutes. And you're going to see what that injects for your application. We've got a cell, and then we've got forms so that we can collect some data for our deployment that might be specific to a foundation or a network that you were on, for example. And lastly, your dependencies, which it could be a lot more than MySQL. Any questions? Okay, so now that I have done that.
No, zip it up first.
Oh, that's right, good call. So, back to the zip. So I'm going to take, and now if you actually look at this command, we're just going to take and call everything that's in Go deps, data, all those folders. Those are all your Go bits, your app bits for the Go application. And then we're going to zip that up into a zip file. Okay? So now, based on that tile YAML right here, let me get to that point, we have the path to this particular application bits. And then this one is resources. So if I went right, I can see I have my icon that I want to put for my tile, and I also have this jar. Okay? Now, the tile build. I was just so excited to build a tile. All right. And so here you go. Really exciting. There's a lot of magic going on in there. You know, it's a conference, it's about spring, a lot of Spring Boot. There's a lot of magic, so we're all used to the magic. We'll give that, it doesn't take very much longer than right now.
So you can see it's creating the deploy all and the delete all. Those are the scripts that it runs as it deploys and deletes the tile to set all these things up for you.
And now you can see it's created this memory-based autoscaler.pivotal file. And a couple of things to note inside here is now there is a tile history that basically keeps track of the versions that have gone. So if I go and I do another build of this tile, it will actually increment the version, and it will show all the versions inside there that I've done in the past, but it'll take the latest. So now if I did another tile build, that would say .2. Okay? And of course, you can come in here and control that naming strategy, I think, right?
Yeah, probably.
Actually, we didn't try that.
We didn't try it. But
So
yeah,
anyway,
it's just a text file.
the other thing that is interesting is there are a couple of directories, and we're not going to go into all of these, but inside of the product directory, that's where our pivotal tile is. Okay? So now, all right, we got a tile, great. Now what are we going to do? Well, we're going to go to an ops manager. Okay, we're going to connect back to VPN so I can talk back to our lab. Can everybody see that okay? Is this where I lost my internet connection? Why, yes, I did. Hello, Mr. Google.
Uh-oh.
All right. Let's connect back to that one. There we go. Okay. Someone warned me that there was a reset of the internet every couple of minutes, so we just fell victim to that, or every couple of hours. Okay, so here's a Ops Manager. We've all seen, who hasn't seen Ops Manager before? Excellent. Okay, so we just have a couple of tiles in there already, and now we're going to take our tile and we want to go ahead and install it. Okay, so we're going to come in here, and that's my .1 at 241 today, and we're going to upload that. And so at this point, what are some key things that you want to add on?
I mean, the more interesting bit is seeing the forms that get created for you.
Yes.
And then we can hit the apply changes, but this upload's taken longer than it normally does.
So what we're going to do here is we're working on one lab, okay? Actually, while we're doing that, we're going to work on one lab, and then we're actually going, we have another lab that has the tile already installed. So we're going to fill out the form, we're going to click apply. And then much like the cooking shows of old, put it in the oven, here you
to
go.
Commercial break. Yeah.
And now I have one that's already prepared, which, you know, actually,
Show the slide.
show the slide.
Yeah.
We, of course, and then we're done. So maybe we're done. Let's see here. All right. And we are. Okay, the product is added. And now we're going to go ahead and just like any other tile, there's some things that need to be filled out. We get that visual representation. And we come in, okay, where are we going to put this? In this lab, we're going to go ahead and put this in the second AZ. We'll put it on the other network. Okay, that's pretty standard. Now, there's that extra configuration. Does everybody remember where that came from? That came from right there. Extra configuration. Okay? Inside of there, we're going to have a checkbox and a field that will be called our apps domain, the application domain. So going back, there we go. So we're going to say skip SSL validation. We're going to say this, our domain is apps lab E. All right. And we're going to save that. And then there's a couple of other things that we're not utilizing in this demonstration, but these should be all familiar to you. If you wanted to add some extra errands and have some scripts inside of your tile, this is where you would do those. If you had to do some extra type of activities for, say, when you want to register your broker or when it needs to unregister your broker. You know, that's where you might do those kinds of things, just like in other tiles. And so now at this point, we're going to go to Apply Changes. And we'll watch that just get started. And I'm going to hand this back over to Tom. So now what you're going to see is it's going to go through, and there's the interesting part that will come up by the time we show the other part. We should see that that's actually done. Okay? So now, let's go ahead and give the demo over to Tom. We're going to switch from one lab. We're going to go to this other lab where we already have a tile in. And before I hand it over to him, I'm going to show you this other ops manager. Okay? And so this has a different set of tiles in it. And just so you don't think that it's a different version, different AZs, the same extra configuration, but this time it's lab B. right? So I just wanted to show you, we want to show you that, you know, hey, we're not pulling any smoke and mirrors here. Okay, so that's in the second lab, and now I'll hand this over to Tom. The apps manager and show you, now we have a tile that's installed, and this is how you can interact with your tile.
All right, so let's make sure we're targeted to the right place here. And we're on lab E.
So
I'm going to change it to B.
Yeah, let's make that.
So I want to take you to the Oregon space that got created by the tile generation, show you the apps that are in there that deployed, show you the marketplace, and then we'll start tailing the logs of the actual nozzle application and show you receiving the commands as we create and bind a service.
And that is P dash.
Scaling service org, yeah.
I'll let you go ahead and drive now.
All right. It gets there. Okay, so CF apps, you can see we've got the autoscaler there and the autoscaler web. In this lab, we're up to version 4. What else we got here? CF marketplace. You can see that the memory-based autoscaler is there and it's ready to go. So if we start tailing the logs of this fella here, great. So one of the easiest ways to describe this happening is we'll just go through the console because it's a little quicker that way. So if we come to the demo org and demo space, different space, same lab, we've got this dummy application which is currently stopped. All this dummy app is real simple Go app that allocates a ton of memory linearly and grows until it eventually crashes. But for a memory scaling demonstration, it's pretty handy. So if we look at the services inside this Oregon space, there are none, but we can add one from the marketplace. You know, we've got our memory autoscaler here, so we're going to add this guy. Dictionary. Man, your computer's weird. Bronze plan, we're going to select this guy, give it a name of dummy scaler, add to space demo, and we'll go ahead and bind it to the dummy application while we're at it. So we added that, and if we come back to the logs, you can see that we received the put v2 service instances, service instance ID, and down below it, service instances, instance ID, service bindings, binding ID. The CF-CLI takes care of that and passes those IDs in. We do the bookkeeping in our own app and MySQL database to keep track of those IDs. So now the app's there, the service instance is there, it's bound to the application. Next interesting thing to do is come back to the app itself. And we'll take a look at it here, and you can, what is wrong with your mouse?
You're right-clicking.
You're left-handed. Oh my God. You drive. Kind of loud.
There you go. So go ahead, you can talk.
All right, I'll talk. So you can see the dummy scaler got bound to the service instance, and that manage link right now is available. It's open and is pointing to the memory-based autoscaler web portion. So it comes up, and here you are. There's our console that we also deployed along with in the tile, and they're linked to the app's console. We didn't have to do any other magic, but just return that JSON string from the create instance piece. So it's not doing any scaling right now. We have to specifically tell it to start. It's got 2 for the minimum instances, 10 for the maximum, and a maximum memory threshold of 100 megabytes.
So do we want to show?
Yeah. So let's go ahead and start it first, and we'll show the connection to the fire hose, and then we'll start the app.
So also one thing to note, there's only one instance out there to start with. And if you notice, before we click start, we have our instance threshold set to 2. Okay? So one of the things that you should notice right away is, hey, I'm below my minimum, so I need to do something. Okay? And so now, what was that you want to?
Let's start the scaler first, and then we'll start the app.
Yep.
So back at the web dashboard.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so now what that's done is it's done a post back to the service broker on a different endpoint to actually do the action of of starting to connect to the fire hose and actually scale.
Yeah, you can show that in the log too if
yes,
you want.
we
that
can.
It's connected to the fire hose.
So right here, once we called that auto scale with the service instance ID, that's just an endpoint that we had for our application, we're now connected to the fire hose and routing events, receiving events for that application, the dummy application.
Right, and we use the credentials that were passed in as environment variables to the application to connect to the fire hose.
Right, and after we go through this, we'll show you some of the environment variables that get injected during the actual the tile installation.
Right. So it's looking for container events associated with this dummy application. Because dummies stop, there are no events, so it's not going to do anything interesting until it starts seeing them. So let's go ahead and start the app. So you had a question earlier, Mark. Is this answering that question about creating and binding the service? Yeah, you could have done that through the command line as well, CF CS with the service name and the correct parameters, and then the CFBS to bind it to your application. So right now this is configured to only get events every 30 seconds. There was the first one. We're scaling from 1 to 2 instances because we were below the minimum threshold. CF apps, and hey look, we got 2 instances now. Give it a little more time and it'll show the memory statistics for each of the application instances. There they are. Average memory consumption is 73 megabytes. We're below the threshold. Give it another 30 seconds, it'll be over the threshold the next time.
Right, so everything we're showing you here is just the algorithm, the secret sauce inside the memory autoscaler that's actually going through right now. That what we have deployed via the tile, that application, that nozzle has connected the fire hose for that dummy application, is now receiving container metric events, and then we are responding to those container metric events based on memory. So now it's crossed the threshold.
Right, but it's only been 15 seconds since it crossed, so it's going to wait a little bit and make sure we're actually over and consistently over before scaling it up again.
And these are all kinds of things that you can certainly tune or whatever in your application, or if you wanted to try and use this memory autoscaler as something that you want to work with. Did it actually scale? No.
Nope.
Not yet.
It's only been 29 seconds. Next one it should, though.
Correct.
Or maybe the next one it will.
Yes,
It is,
the question is are the secret sauce in our application invoking some command to scale? And the answer is yes. There's a method inside that project that actually will scale the app once it reaches a threshold event. It exceeds that threshold based on the algorithm that Tom mentioned. It will call this method, and then it's using the Go client as a helper, and it will actually post to the CF API, and then you'll scale the instances.
It actually ends up using the same credentials, the administrator credentials that it's using to connect to the fire hose. Because those were passed in as environment variables, and they're administrator credentials, it can do anything it wants on any app. You have to have credentials if you want to do something against the CLA.
Needs, yes, you're talking about
Back in the tile.yaml,
this
we said
particular
needs the
part
credentials.
right here that says I need CF service credentials, or CF credentials. Yep, and we're going to show that in a second after we've just now shown.
So why don't we go ahead and stop dummy before it steals all the memory in our lab.
Yes. Because
That needs a better name. Memory sucks.
right.
I was thinking of Dustin. All right.
Oh, yes, thank you. You guys encouraged him from his earlier joke. Thank you. Okay.
So let's go ahead and target back to the scaling org and do a CFenv on those apps.
Yep. Okay, so we're back in here, and we'll look at, so right here you can see all of the variables that have been inserted from the tile generation. And you can see specifically, here's the one that we added in our form. Okay? So now this is what, and if I did it for the other app, you would see, let's do,
It doesn't have those user credentials that were available in the other app, but it still has the Our Apps domain and the skip SSL validation that would pass through in the form inside the tile.
right, and it does not have those credentials because right here we said it's false. Does not need the CF credentials. So it will not get injected in your application.
So we're running low on time. Let's see if that tile got deployed.
Install issues. Okay.
This worked 2 hours ago, I swear.
It's all right. So we're not going to go into troubleshooting why that didn't work, but you could go back to the tile logs. Some things that we've had is, we missed dependencies or something. It probably, we didn't check in something in a project appropriately. We'll make sure that's all cleaned up, for sure. So at this point, now, some folks have asked, where can I get these projects? And these are continuously living. So what you've seen here is it started, so by no way, shape, or form is it in any production form. It is demoware. But it's definitely meant to help you see how can I go from, I have some application. What is the art of the possible? I have some application that I want to present to my organization, to my enterprise, that does something useful. And how do I want to manage the life cycle of that? How do I want to make it easy to go ahead and deploy multiple components and dependencies without having to build my own scripts? Well, we showed you a way that you can do it with the tile generator. So are there any questions?
Questions?
So the question is, go over the sequence of events when we did the dummy app start. Okay. So, right, so what actually happened when we go back, I'm going to go back to this piece right here. Oh, let me find my... So right here, when we were in the apps manager, and we went into the marketplace, and we said, so at the point when we installed the tile, right, it puts, and we said, in this particular property, enable global access plans to true. Okay, there's actually a CF-CLI command that you can use to execute on a service broker to make those plans public in the marketplace. But in this tile.yaml, you set that to true, and then what happens is your new service broker service will show up inside the marketplace. So then inside the marketplace, we came in, we selected a plan, and then we actually named it something, some service, and then we
because dummy's already bound.
Badam is already bound.
Yes.
Yes. So this is the point where if I was doing it from the CF-CLI, I would go in there and I would say CF create service, and then that's basically what I'm doing through here, and then I would bind the service, and that's through the bind app. So the step at which we did this is when it actually created the service and then bound it to dummy, the application that is the memory hog. Okay, but we didn't have it started. So it still bound the service, and then we went ahead and started the service, and that's when, started the app.
Well, started the Firehose instance is what actually got started there.
Yes.
So inside the app broker, we created an instance, subscribed, it's ready to subscribe to the Firehose. It's got all the information it needs to subscribe to the Firehose and look for particular events. We just hadn't told it to start listening yet. So when we went to that console with the 6 fields, min, max instances, things like that, the very next step is say, okay, go ahead and start listening for events. We've created the service instance, we've bound the service instance to the app, now we're listening for events on that particular app. So
just to highlight that in the logs, at the point when we click bound in the application or create, it actually went through, it made a call to this particular endpoint right here. This is where the cloud controller made an invocation with this service instance GUID. Okay? Then we're actually inside our nozzle code that what'd you do to my machine? And that's just a logging statement that says we're in that create service method. It's done creating the instance. Okay? And then what you'll actually see is now, because we filled out that other dialog down here, we're saying to bind. Then it actually went through and it made another put to that endpoint where the cloud controller said, all right, here is the service instance with that GUID from it earlier. Now we're going to add the service binding to it. And then at the time when you bind the service, it's now ready to be turned on, if you will. So if you've used the PCF CPU autoscaler, you have to turn it on. We followed the same model. So right now you have that nozzle, the service broker, an instance of that service broker, bound to an app, and it's waiting to be started to actually connect to the app. Okay? And that's when we went to this web interface right here, and we had to give it some parameters to do. Right? So these are the thresholds that we told it to do. And then we said start. And at that point, it came back to the application. So from that web application, our control admin panel there, it actually took the service instance ID that it had from when we installed and we clicked manage, right? And then it actually, at that point, it connected to the fire hose for that particular app to collect container metric events.
So most of that is a function of the way we built the app. We modeled it after the current CPU autoscaler. If we wanted to, we could have started listening and subscribing right away when we bound the service instance. This step, it's not completely necessary, but it also gave us a chance to show off the console and how the dashboard and the application were related through the Apps Manager console.
Right. Again, the point to show you, there's no restriction on how that interaction, how the sequence of steps that you need to do before you actually, when you bind your service. It doesn't all have to be done in those steps.
Is there a way to pass those parameters, like maximum memory overlap at the time of the binding or creation?
The question is,
Yeah.
is there a way that you can pass those parameters at the time of the binding? And the answer is yes. You could have easily come into this particular spot here, and we could have, it's just like a regular application manifest, and we could have come in and put my environment variable and put all those values right there, and then we could have gotten them from the app.
I don't think that's what you're at. You're talking about when you do like a CFBS, you can pass a list of parameters also, or a JSON string with like a whole bunch of name value pairs, and then that gets passed along from the CLI.
Do the binding the service broker to the app at that point.
Right. Yeah, we could have those parameters as part of the bind instance. We're just not looking for them right now. That'd be a good feature to add, actually.
Any other questions? All right. Oh, yes. How do we create the nozzle? Is that the question? Okay. How do we create the nozzle? So the way we did the nozzle was we actually subscribed to it. It's just a WebSocket endpoint. And then if are you familiar with any of the NOAA client or any of the example nozzle that are out there in the community? So this one's based off of Firehose to syslog. Okay, so we took Firehose to syslog, forked it, modified it so that it's subscribed and connected to the Firehose, in the Firehose, for those that don't know, there's a compression protocol, binary compression protocol, dropsondy, that the events go across. So your nozzle first connects to that WebSocket endpoint, and then you actually have to, that's why we use the Firehose to syslog. It unravels those events and makes it so that now we can consume and check, is this first of all the app we want to look at? And then we've already only subscribed to container events. container metric event, excuse me. So does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Okay. How do we get the dashboard URL? So the we got that from the application here. Okay, so this is another application that has a route. All right, and in our create service that we implemented, I guess I can show that.
So part of the way we created that route while he's looking it up, we put that parameter our apps domain in there, which ends up being the prefix, not the prefix, the suffix, the midfix. The middle part of the URL. The beginning of the URL was hard-coded because we had control over the routes of both the web piece and our broker piece.
So I'll answer this question. This will be the last one. We're down to 1 minute. At this point right here, this is where we've identified these URLs and these particular functions. And so now I'm going to go to my create service, which is inside the handler here. And inside that particular function, if you actually look right here, and this is where, it's only demo code, is we're actually building a result that has that dashboard URL that links back to the application. So we passed in this apps domain parameter. We could have parameterized that, but for demonstration, we didn't worry about it. And that's how we sent that back. And once we sent that back in the response, the apps manager puts that as a manage link on your service.
That's actually something we wanted to mention. That's a great question. The question was about making your services and your tiles public. This last link, is that showing up? Not very well.
Wait for the front slide. And then we had to do it right here, second button.
And here we go. So the last one, the Pivotal ecosystem, is a place for you to take your tiles, and working with the Pivotal folks, you can make them publicly available for other people to consume.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.